probably a pretty good chance that most of you are not that familiar with Gemalto, although many of you may know the company that I have been associated with, which is called SafeNet. And earlier this year, SafeNet was acquired by Gemalto and now represents one of the largest information security companies in the world. My personal background is that of applying security into enterprise storage systems, and I've been doing that for a little bit more than a decade. What I'd like to do today is kind of walk you through a little bit of what's been going on relative to information security and stored data, talk a little bit about the approach that we have at Gemalto as to how you can secure that data, and then go into some very specific solutions that we have, primarily as a result of our partnership with NetApp as one of the leading storage vendors, and things that are available for you to work with us via cStor. So, you know, it's certainly not a surprise to anyone the breaches that we're seeing in the world today. There seems to be more and more constant information coming up in the news, in the press about breaches. I certainly have nothing, you know, new for you in terms of the traditional breaches that we've seen. It just continues to be a significant challenge. One of the things that we actually do at Gemalto SafeNet is maintain a web page called the Breach Level Index. Something you might be interested in going and taking a look at, but we'll actually track breaches that come out, track records, track the nature of the breaches, the industries that have been impacted, etc. But I think that, you know, ultimately the breach concept, the visibility that breaches are getting in the world today, is something that's really driven a lot of organizations to take a new look at how they're securing their sensitive data. And when we want to secure our sensitive data, you know, encryption is certainly going to be a part of it. And I think that when we talk to folks about why they're actually encrypting their data or why they want to encrypt their data, it really falls into a couple different categories. The ones that we've seen for a while now have been compliance-regulated things, whether that's data privacy laws that could be nationwide, could be state, could even be local, that say you need to protect and secure your constituents' information, and if that information is believed to have been breached, you may have to make a notification, as an example. Those are really how those notification laws started. Interestingly enough, in the early days, it was a lot more about we had to encrypt the data, and if it was encrypted, we didn't have to make a notification, and security didn't really matter that much. One example I often give is some of the early tape encryption solutions required key management. If I was going to put a tape in a box and hand it to someone from Iron Mountain who was going to take it away, it was pretty difficult to ensure that I could get that key for that tape when I needed it. So in many cases, the solution was to put the key in the box with the tapes. Well, if you think about it from a security standpoint, that's kind of silly, because if I steal the box, I have the encrypted data and the key that I need. But from some of the early compliance rules, it actually made a lot of sense because the data was encrypted, therefore I didn't have to make a notification of the breach. Obviously, there's a number of industry-specific things that go on. We see a lot of these in the financial sector, in the healthcare sector, where organizations are being driven to secure their data. But I think areas where I'm the most interested in personally are some of the others. One is just intellectual property within an organization. I've seen a dramatic shift lately of organizations wanting to protect their data because it's their data and it's the right thing to do, not because some law or compliance officer is telling them they should do it. You know, one of the more visible breaches we've had lately was the Sony breach. That wasn't a breach of compliance-related data as much as just an impact of their internal systems, and that caused them a great amount of pain. So it's an example. But we also see industrial espionage and other things, even internal employees taking data outside the firm and selling it. That need to secure your own intellectual property has really gotten a lot more visibility lately. And then finally is just technology trends. We're seeing obviously a huge shift to virtualization that's already happened, and now migration of that to the cloud. Organizations want to take advantage of the cost efficiencies that are available in the cloud, etc., but they don't want to be stuck with the liability of that sensitive data. So drivers like that are also really managing to push people towards securing their data. I think looking forward, though, I'm also a little bit concerned personally because of the nature of some of these breaches. I gave the example earlier about Sony. You know, in the past, we would see these breaches where 1 million credit cards or 3 million credit card numbers were compromised. And I'm not going to suggest by any means that didn't have an impact on people. But the reality is, how significant was that impact? Maybe you had to get a new credit card, you had to work to get your credit scores adjusted. You had to notify everyone that you had a preset credit card number with that you had a different credit card number now. But there's some things that are starting to change. You know, the Ashley Madison breach, well, on one hand is everyone snickers about it. I think, you know, we're starting to see lives are being affected by that, and there's no real financial gain from the hackers that came from that. Even to the point where, you know, the reports are that there are so many .mil email addresses used there. Under the American laws, an active duty person in the military, it's against the law to commit adultery. So in theory, people on that list could even be convicted of a crime. And looking even further forward, I really start to worry about things like the critical infrastructure of the country, electric, water, all those kinds of things. But to make it a little more personal, we're certainly starting now to see things like self-driving cars. There's a picture here of a Google example. I visited Silicon Valley myself many times and seen the Google cars driving up and down the freeway. So far, never without a person in the car, although sometimes without a person behind the driver's seat or in the driver's seat. But, you know, that's also something that has me greatly concerned. We're going to put our families in these cars. These cars are designed to receive things like updates over the internet. How are we going to ensure that that data remains secured, that those cars aren't being hacked, and all of a sudden we have a bunch of self-driving cars hurtling down highways at 90 miles an hour? The nature of these threats is going from financial inconvenience to potential ensure that only people who need to be able to see that data are able to see that data. At the same time, whenever we encrypt data, we create encryption keys, and it's really important that we have strong management of those keys. If you think of my example earlier, if I encrypt data with the best encryption method in the world, but I put the key in the box with the tape, I've really done nothing to secure the data. So it's really important that I can manage my keys, whether that means creating strong keys, define policies on how I rekey data, what happens when a key expires, how do I destroy data, etc. And obviously all these things are still based on users, so it's really important that we also have the ability to properly authenticate our users. Simple usernames and passwords may work for some users in some data sets. For other users and data sets, it may be important to have more strong methods of authentication. But if we can't properly identify that a user is who they say they are, then applying these policies just makes no sense at all. So ultimately what this means is we need to protect our data where it matters, and that shouldn't be any different whether that data is locally inside your building, whether it's being replicated, whether it's being archived, even if it's being sent out to the cloud. We need to apply the appropriate levels of data security, key management, and user authentication to that data wherever that data is. So let's actually go and take a look at how we apply some of these things into the storage infrastructure, and specifically some of the things we've done in partnership with NetApp. The first option in the NetApp portfolio is something called NSE. So if we can go 2 slides ahead, Jennifer. NSE This is an excessive delay right now. I'm slowly advancing. So in NetApp storage encryption uses encrypting hard drives in your storage system. So if you think about the methodology of this, now we've got each hard drive, now we've gone far too far. So if you can get back to the NSE slide, and I'll just keep talking. What we're doing is actually having the individual hard drives do their own encryption. So data is going to flow from the user through the network into the storage controller, and all be unencrypted, and then right before it's written to the media of the drive itself, it's encrypted. And this model has some distinct advantages. Primarily, it relates to performance because each drive has its own encryption processor. If I have 10 drives, I have 10 crypto processors. If I have 1,000 drives, I have 1,000 crypto processors. So performance is very easy to maintain. Also, because the data is in the clear whenever it's not on the drive, any functionality that I have above that is going to be, not impacted at all. It's going to be incredibly transparent. A block of data is a block of data. It's only encrypted when it's on the media, but the storage controller, the network, the user only sees that data when it's in the clear. So, there's some distinct advantages of that. There's also some challenges that come from that as well, though, depending on what the requirements are. Effectively, what NSE does is secure the media. So when your data is on the media, it's going to be secured. If someone pulls a drive out, great. The data on that drive is secured. One of the more challenging situations in the past, what if a drive fails? Well, I can't sanitize that drive, so if I just pull it out and all data on that drive is encrypted, that's terrific. But are there threats to my data at other places in the infrastructure? Am I worried about data inside the storage controller? In other words, am I worried about the storage administrators being able to access the data? If I replicate data from one site to another, am I worried about someone eavesdropping on the line? Am I worried about the state of that data when it gets to the other side? I'm not suggesting these are weaknesses in an approach like NSE. Well, I guess what I'm really saying is there are different approaches to securing data, and they solve different problems. So ultimately, if what I'm concerned about is someone stealing a disk or a disk failure, or maybe even someone stealing an entire system, we see a lot of NSE solutions being deployed for organizations that have small data centers. They may not have big, thick doors and guys with guns that stand outside 27 by 24. They're worried about someone stealing the entire system. Again, if that media is removed, NSE does a terrific job of securing that data. If we go to the next slide, though, we'll look at another approach, which is a product from Gemalto called SafeNet Storage Secure. Storage Secure, rather than being a media encryption solution, is actually a data encryption solution. So this is an appliance that you would put in your network. It would sit between your users and storage, and it would actually encrypt the data before it gets to the storage infrastructure. So in this case, so in other words, that, as I said earlier, that encryption follows the data. It also provides some unique capabilities in that if the data is encrypted when it's in the storage controller, someone who's an administrator of the storage controller doesn't automatically have access to the data. So my ability to manage data for my users as a storage admin is still there. I still see files, I can back them up, I can restore them, I can replicate them from one site to another, etc. But if I try to access the data inside those files, it's encrypted and I'm not going to be able to see it. This also represents something I've seen change over the last many years in storage in the enterprises. As an encryption vendor, we used to sell a lot on the threat of internal storage admins. In some organizations, that was a tough sale. To be in a room with a bunch of people who run storage and say, you can't trust the people that run storage, was problematic. What I've seen really change is a lot of the time now storage administrators actually really like the idea that I can manage data, but I can no longer access it. And I mentioned the Sony breach earlier. That's probably another approach to encrypting data. If we go to our next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about key management. So in the Gemalto family, we have a suite of products that we call SafeNet Key Secure. And you can read in the diagram the things that a key manager really needs to do: generate keys, activate keys, rotate keys, compromise, backup, deactivate, and destroy keys. But the end goal here is that we want to have a system that's capable of doing those things, allowing us to enable the security policies and processes that we have in place. But we also need an ability to do it to meet our requirements. So inside the kSecure family, we actually but they do it very differently, they scale very differently, and they come in at different price points. If I take that even a level further, we're starting to see now migration for some customers of key management to the cloud. So in AWS, as an example, we have our key manager that's available as an AWS option, where you can just buy a SafeNet key manager via AWS on a subscription basis. One of the ways I can tell you that I'm really excited about that, for those of you who are NetApp customers and follow NetApp, you may be familiar with something they have called Cloud ONTAP, which is basically the ability to run the NetApp operating system in an AWS infrastructure. That was recently updated to include encryption, so you can do volume level encryption of your data that's in your Cloud ONTAP. Obviously, that's important if you're going to have sensitive company data running in the AWS environment. You want to encrypt it. But remember what I said, as soon as we encrypt data, we need key management. So Cloud ONTAP with volume level encryption launched the day that it launched with support for SafeNet's kSecure, whether that kSecure device is on your customer premises or running in the cloud. And in just a few weeks, we've actually seen a huge uptake of our cloud offerings for key management. So it's just another application. But again, what I'm trying to reinforce with that is that when you encrypt, you need key management. The other aspect that's important of a key manager is how it applies to all your solutions. So if we go to the next slide, I'm just giving you an example of what we can do in terms of managing keys for other partners. I've spoken a lot on this call about NetApp as one of our storage partners, but you'll see there are a number of different products from a bunch of different companies where we can manage their keys. And if we can go back one slide for me, Jennifer, and we do that all within the same product. So you don't, there was a time in the past where if I had 5 encryption solutions, I very likely would have had 5 key managers. And not only is that expensive to buy and deploy, it's a pain to manage. Looks like it's my slide that's actually advancing, Jennifer, somehow. I apologize for that. And I would have to, I could argue it was even less secure with a number of different key managers. But by having a single product that's able to manage keys for a whole bunch of different partners, what it really means is that you have the ability to buy the encryption solution you need for a given set of data and deploy it, but be able to manage the keys with a common key management platform. So Gemalto, I gave you a little bit of an introduction to it earlier. You can read the numbers for yourself, but Gemalto, of which SafeNet is now a proud part, a very large multinational security organization, has a number of different product lines that get involved in a lot of different things. And those things range from the chips that are on credit cards to SIM cards that are in your cell phones to very specific identity and data protection solutions, which is the part of Gemalto that I'm in. If you go to the next slide, Jennifer, we have the requisite customer pretty logo slide. We have lots of different customers, as you would imagine, from an organization of our size. But really, again, what I want to leave you with is that the nature of the threats to data is changing. I think that it's really important that we have the ability to secure that data from those threats, whether they be around encryption. And then finally, all of this, comes crashing down unless we properly authenticate our users. If I have the strongest encryption system in the world, but I let anyone access the key, therefore access the data, I might as well not have encrypted the data at all. So it's really important that we have all 3 of those things together. So that's really the end of the information that I had for you guys today.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thank you, Blair. This is a little off script, but I've started watching Mr. Robot last night. So for those of you that have an interest in this type of technology, I highly recommend watching that show. It's fantastic. Blair, do you watch Mr. Robot?
You know, I got it on my list to start. I've heard about it from a few folks and really need to.
Yeah, you need to, because it is pertinent to that presentation you just gave. I'll kind of leave it at that. Thanks. Next steps. For those of you interested in learning more about the Gemalto solution from SafeNet, you can schedule a face-to-face meeting with a cStor representative, and anyone that schedules that meeting before September 30th, 2015 will receive a $50 gift card. We offer this to our new clients and prospects only, so those of you that are already cStor clients, we appreciate your business, but this does not work for you. To schedule a meeting, call me. The phone number is 505-288-3882, or you can email me at the email address you see there. And then we also have some upcoming events a week from today, I believe, September 2nd, Liberate Your Data, featuring NetApp Data Fabric Solutions. And then for those of you in the Phoenix area, we have a cooking class on September 24th. The material for that cooking class will be the recipe for a smooth CDOT migration. CDOT, obviously, the operating system for NetApp. So that's by invitation only, but if you're interested, contact me, and we'll certainly make sure we got a spot for you. And then, as always, for more information on upcoming events, please go to our cStor.com/events website, and you can see them all there. I think that's all I've got for today. Blair, thank you very much. Great presentation. Jennifer, thank you for all the logistics. And everyone have a great day.
Yep, thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And that will conclude our webinar event for today. We'd like to once again thank our speakers and everyone for taking time out of your busy day to join us. We hope to see you soon on a future cStor event. Have a great day.